your grades. But the store vendor had seen Joe more times than he was able to forget.
Okay, guys, so let's begin with preparing for the job interview. So there's several things that you can do. Sorry, why is this not? Oh. Several things that you can do, to prepare yourself. So let's talk about the Zoom meeting rules. And this is something that you should think about when you are coming up with your own classroom rules on the first day. And they might ask you, like, what is your classroom management style? What is your discipline policy? And you need to sort of think of having thought about it beforehand. Like, what do I want my classroom to look like? And what sort of expectations do I have for behavior? And the truth of the matter is that whenever you enter the classroom with the students, they're going to behave for you better and make sort of like a community pact if they were part of the discussion where the rules were made. So every year I would spend more time with my students discussing sort of like the beginning of the year things and doing the beginning of the year things before getting into the curriculum than my colleagues, because we discussed these are the district objectives. Like, this is how much we got. And back then when I started teaching in 2003 at a seventh grade campus. I'm not a seventh grade, but a middle school campus called Liberty Middle School for PSJA ISD. And Ruben Leo is coming in. So what I learned very quickly, and what I learned from research, because at the time I was a graduate student, is that whenever people are part of the building of the expectations, you get that personal buy-in. And so that's what I would do with my students, discuss with them the objectives that we had as a class. And then we talked about, like, how can we accomplish these in a way that is, conducive. And then there was that buy-in, because they are the ones that said, like, oh, we don't, interrupt people, so we're muted at all times. And so a discussion of those things before putting into play, in lieu of coming in with already your classroom rules. Okay, so advanced preparation. Your interview, like I said before, we were talking about before we started, starts before you walk into an employer's door. So you are going to be technology applications, right? Is that correct? So that means that if you haven't already looked at the technology application standards that are on the TEA website, you have to do that. You have to look at what are the things that the state requires, the state and therefore the district and the campus, that and be able to do for your students in any of the classes that they put you in. So that's a document that we'll be taking a look at later. But these are the types of the types of research we discussed, looking at if you know the campus and the district. Awesome. Utilize what you know about that in your interview. If you don't, research it. Google their campus and begin to familiarize yourself with some of their campus goals, even the campus mascot, maybe some of the extracurricular activities that they have available, so you can make yourself sort of stand out if that's your thing. Okay, so step one, you have to understand yourself. So this is what you're going to be thinking about prior to you going into the interview. Really assessing yourself and taking an inventory of your attributes so that you can talk about them in a sort of comfortable way. And there's all this and I see this, you guys are all adults, but before, when I was asking for, people who wanted to give me their content area that they were going to be applying for, only 2 people responded, and only 1 person responded verbally. So for the purposes of your interview, if you feel uncomfortable talking, you need to practice. You need to practice not only talking about yourself, but practice talking about content specific stuff having to do with you. Practice talking about, things that you would do to help your students increase oral language proficiency, which is something everyone should say in their interview, and they should do in their classroom when they get there. So making sure that you sort of take an accurate reflection of yourself, be comfortable with talking about it. And if you've done community service, or you do stuff with the church, all of that is important. All of that adds to your ability to work with groups of students, your work ethic, your values, your resume. And there's a resume link that will be emailed to everyone. For the resume, you have to think that the principals are incredibly busy. They have a job of not only being the campus leader as far as the teachers are concerned, but they also are the ones who are concerned with like the safety, the budget, the parents, the clubs, the buses. It's just everything. And they don't want to read a novel, right? Make sure that after you've taken your inventory of things that sort of make you shine, and that you have sort of highlighted things that are listed on the job listing, because you want to include in your resume skills and characteristics that your employer, the person that you're applying to, the district you're applying to, highlighted in their job description that they thought was valuable. So if you're someone, who is a team player, and then put that on there, and list an example, if it's possible, that reflects that. Don't be too wordy. Look at what their goal is for that position. And I would say each time you apply to a different campus, if you're applying to multiple campuses, please take a good look at the job description, because it'll say we are looking for, PSJ North ISD is a district that is, dedicated to innovation, blah, 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 blah. You should talk about how innovation is important to you, maybe somewhere in your thing. Look at what they're looking for. And I'm not saying copyright infringement their stuff, but take some things that are part of your repertoire of skills and highlight those as they are available. I'm not saying to lie. I'm just saying what is reflective of you. Make sure you highlight that on your resume, and that you keep it simple and short, that you highlight the things that they look for most. There, your key qualifications, certainly your education, and related job history. Your teaching portfolio. This is something that everyone should begin before they get into the classroom. And so it's not just for the interview. And in many universities, their teaching portfolio is sort of like their guide to the first, 6 weeks of school a little bit, but it's based on the district. Every district has a different process. Every single district. I have worked at 3 districts in 15 years and 4 districts in 15 years, and they're all different. They use different methods, blah, blah, blah. But this is sort of like a thinking about what my goals are in my profession is what the teaching portfolio does. And it sort of keeps you on track and has some expectations and sample lesson plans. At least that's what it was for me when we had to create it. So your resume should be in there. The second most important thing is your teaching philosophy. And everybody thinks like, oh, well, that's not, yeah, the teaching philosophy, I get it's not that big. It was like, I want to change the world, blah, blah, blah. But I really want everybody that's here today to, and I didn't have a chance, but I was going to do this little assignment via a Google survey and have you guys all send me your teaching philosophies because I want to look at it. But I have to take this time to tell you that teaching has been very important in my life, even since I was a child. And so I have like understood teaching and education and felt different ways about it throughout my life since I was a child. And right now at my age, I tutor and support the next generation of teachers for Teacher Builder and other companies. So teaching is incredibly important. And like 3 days ago, I had a conversation with someone who, after knowing that I was doing, that I do what I do, and that I have been, an educator since 2003, a in classroom teacher 15 years, and then teaching teachers for, however many years. He said, oh, well, teachers just go in it for the money so that they have like an easy job, so they don't have to like do anything. That's the way it was in my high school, and that's the way that it is now. And there are a lot of people that have that mentality. Obviously, I followed up with all this stuff and like everything that we do and how important our job is. But our job is incredibly important as teachers. I would venture to say that it's as important or more important than, the armed forces, because all of the professions come through teachers. All of the children come through teachers. And so if you're a teacher who doesn't care if you're an English language learner, who doesn't really like anyone, who just sits on their butt and makes people feel bad, are the kids going to be supported to go off and be citizens that are good? We know that they won't be. We know that they won't meet. We know how detrimental it is if we don't do a good job. We do. Everyone else doesn't realize how much teachers have to learn and continue to learn and do in order to be ridiculed by strangers, at a restaurant. So it's a difficult job. So thinking about the teaching philosophy is important. What do you want to do with your profession? And every day that I was in the classroom, I wanted to make my students feel safe, important, and for them to grow under my care. That's it. We're going to achieve the goals. They're going to be safe. They're going to feel important. All of them, even the ones that other people say, other teachers find annoying. And I always got the same thing because I never found anyone annoying. I'm sorry, I just don't. I didn't have any problems. But I had order in my room, and people would for years say, and I had hard kids, guys, from gangs when I was a teacher at PSJ North and at Edinburgh High after it moved to the new campus. I had kids that gave other teachers nightmares, and during ARDS they would say, I don't know why they don't throw things in your classroom, because I make them feel valuable, because I talk to them and I listen to them, and I try to get them to do things that they need to do, using things that they like, just for them, even if it's just for them. And everyone else has to do just the curriculum stuff. So going the extra mile, knowing how important it is for our kids. Kids only spend time with their parents and the schools, largely. EC through 12, that's the truth. From 8 in the morning or 7:30 until whenever you're dismissed. And so we're also really important safety nets for children that are experiencing abuse, child abuse. Really important. So we have an incredible responsibility and do so much for society. And I want for you to take your teaching philosophy sort of serious and think about how important, cool, and noble, regardless of what anyone you come across during your profession or you see online will say to you, teaching is. It is not the easy way out by any stretch of the imagination. So get your teaching philosophy together. Think about what your goals are as a profession. So if you are applying to, like you said, a technology position, you already know what your goals are. You already started. You're on this step right now because you have already said in your mind, these are some of the things I'd like to focus on and reasons why I want to focus on them. They're going to eat that up. They're going to enjoy that you have thought about these things beforehand and that they connect to the outside world, because that's very important, because our students need to understand that learning is not does not happen in a vacuum. Knowledge is not in a vacuum. It's not just technology in a bubble. It's like immersed in everything that we do in all of the content areas. And so the more we show that to students, the better. Your teaching methods and strategies. This is something that's also very important for you to think of beforehand. What are your methods going to be like? There's a lot different methods you can use for instruction. And for instance, you can do direct instruction method. You could do student-centered instruction methods, where the students are the ones that are sort of handling the main action, doing all the work, and you're just the manager making sure that they're following the steps of the lesson that you did. So the group works, the think, pair, share. So all the different opportunities for the students to practice their oral language proficiency. Like, what things have you thought about? So if you haven't already thought about things that you could think of, particular lessons that you can do, the first thing that you're going to have to do is pull up your content standards. And we're going to take a look at some examples of them in a little bit, and make sure, and the TEKS, to make sure that you have looked through the TEKS and that you see what they're going to want you to be teaching, like what you're going to have to teach. So you think about, how would I teach some of these ideas? How would I do some of these things? And these are all located on the TEA website, the Texas Education Agency website. So expectations for your students. And this is not classroom expectations, because like I said, I like to talk to the students about what our goals are, because I will tell them, okay, guys, last year when I started teaching, we did TAKS. Actually, there were still some kids that were taking TOS at PSJ North when I moved there, when I started doing high school. And TOS was like, I took TOS. So that's a long time ago. Anyway, whatever, the baby star, and then the star that we have now, that's like the EOT. So, they would rate the different schools based on how we did. And I said, okay, we were 9th grade and we got or 8th grade, y'all did this much. And so we want to try to move, this much up, and these are our goals. And so we talked about the different things that we needed to do. And then we have to do, Romeo and Juliet, and we have to talk about technology and all this stuff. And we talked about the behaviors that would be necessary in order for us to be successful. And before I had this conversation with them, I also had a conversation with them that told them that I am, and this is part of my teaching method, I suppose, building up my sense of classroom community. We are a team. Like, everyone who has ever come through my doors, and they always told them, I will never follow you on social media till you're graduated from high school and you're in college, and then I will accept something from you. They're all graduated now. Like, all my students are all graduated, but we were a community. It was like ssauceda's class. So I built that rapport, that sense of community beforehand. And when we talked about our goals and objectives, You know, it was like us against all the other teachers and even the other classrooms, and you build a safe place for the students to feel valued, and to do that, you have to listen to them, to their interests. You have to note their culture and the nuance. Like if they're having a bad day, then maybe don't be insensitive to them. And so you have to build trust in order for the students to rock it out. Students that have issues to really make progress, you know, because certain things have to happen in somebody's brain for them to let their guard down and for their brains to learn. They have to trust, and they have to be at a state of rest. It's either fight, flight, or freeze. So we don't want them in the freeze or the fighting or the flighting. We don't want any of those. We want them to be absolute, you know, calm. So expectations for your students. Think about those and how. Oh, I think someone needs to mute themselves. Okay, thank you so much. Oh no. Okay. So, sample lesson plans. So yes, I would have a couple of brief lesson plans. And like I said, you can create your lesson plans. You should have some already if you have done any of the coursework. But if you haven't, pull up the TEKs for your content area and look at some maybe that are interesting to you so you can get jazzed about it. You'll do a better job talking about it the day of if it's something that you're interested in and you feel comfortable with. So you don't have to, you know, pick the hardest TEK to impress them. Just choose a TEK and make sure that you cover all the areas of a lesson plan that a teacher should think of. And that would be like, who are my students for this class? Like, are there any English learners? And if so, what supports am I doing for the English learners so that they will master this objective, this learning objective for these TEKs that I identified? Are they special ed? If they are, what supports have I done in order, you know, have I differentiated instruction? Did I give a visual, audio, tactile learning opportunities to make sure that I engaged all different types of learners in the lesson? So those type of things are going to impress the interview committee. You letting them know that you've carefully thought about those things that are incredibly important, and that you're comfortable talking about that content specific, academic specific vocabulary or concepts. Okay, I already said this, but review the job description for which you are applying, and also know what's going to be expected. If you do the research, you use that information as a tool, and it's called the TAPR report. And so it actually, they do it by district and they do it by campus. And you can look at, you know, several years back of campuses and how they did in this state assessment, you know, by grade level, by special population. It also gives you information about their budgeting, where they spent it, their demographics, how much of their population is Asian, how much of their population is African American, how much is Indian, you know, etc. So it gives you a lot of information. What information is useful to you is that it gives you information if you're a content area teacher or special ed on how they do on their standard tests. And so you can sort of identify how you can support them a little bit, and not tell them that you looked and that they were terrible in that area, but rather, you know, sort of highlight your abilities in that area, so to speak. So and I'm trying to get to this, but here it is. Sorry that it's taken so long. Okay, so here's the campus report, campus name. And so I'm going to write, I'm going to do South and I'm going to search. Let's just see what they say. Oh, here it is. It is. So you see how I brought up all of these. I am going to look for the one that I am talking about. These are all different schools and different districts. And I'm looking for South Middle School in Edinburgh. That's Brownsville, South Texas High School for Health Professions. Okay, never mind. I switched my example. I'm going to do this one because that's where I graduated from high school. So that's going to be my example for today. I was going to bring up my child's campus and where I used to teach, but decided against it. So you can bring up the campus report and have that information, that research information. Like I said, it's more useful in ways, I suppose, for those that are content area, those that are, special ed. However, it's also useful because even if you're doing it for technology, Yolanda, you could always, that maybe they're low in mathematics, that you can mention that you're going to support mathematics, sort of mathematical exercises, and talk about how you'll be reinforcing, mathematical concepts and number concepts with the students, and it might give you that extra edge. So this is what it looks like. And so you'll see this is end of course English 1. And so I actually taught that actual exams. Okay, so you have the breakdown here. There isn't enough noted. So it has that asterisk here. And then you have 90% are Hispanic. That meets, okay, that I see that. This is not the population. This is just the number that have tested. So 90% at approaches grade level or above. And then 80 at meets grade level, and only is that 22% at master's grade level. It's difficult to read even on my end. In any event, you could take a look at these and talk about it. So maybe they're really good already with their scores and they don't need like all of this help, but you can talk about how the big jumping from meets to masters is something that all campuses that are already doing okay should be pushing for. Moving the big majority, because right here it shows like 89% or 80% of the white population are at meets, and 2% of Hispanics are at meets. And we want them to move up to masters because it says only 18%. And we want to move that bigger percentage downward at that master's level. So looking at this, reviewing this, important, useful. Although, like I said, I would not sort of point out in a negative way that they're doing poorly. Just that you are able to support in that particular area, it just so happens, and you have no idea why. But certainly let them know that you've looked at the campus. If the campus has a motto of like integrity and kindness and innovation, and then tell them like those are things that I actually really value, and I actually do. I value integrity in human beings today. It's so desperately needed. And I try whenever possible to give my students lessons in integrity. Holding character in difficult situations, maintaining character in difficult situations. It's hard. So integrity is very important. Kindness, incredibly important. So highlight the things that you've researched and make sure that you let them know, that you're a great fit in that way. Be prepared, be on time for your interview, dress professionally, of course, even if it's via Zoom. Make sure that you look like you are a, what is it called, business on the top and party on the bottom if it's via Zoom. But if it's in person, you have to be business top and bottom. Review possible questions and educational terminology and acronyms like GT, which is gifted and talented. And that's something that you're going to want to be knowledgeable in, because like I said, right now, a lot of campuses are not, failing horribly their students. All teachers are working really hard right now to maintain what progress we had made and then lost via the coronavirus. So everybody's working really, really hard and deserves a pat on their back. But we want to make sure that our students that are gifted, that we are giving them opportunities in our lesson, because so many are behind, that we don't overlook our gifted and our advanced students, that we make sure that we're sensitive to our at-risk learners, those that, might be homeless or going through a divorce, or, my daughter is a junior in high school, and she lost her grandma, her mom's dad, to COVID. She lost my prima hermana, my cousin, to COVID. She lost my grandma and grandpa, her great grandma and grandpa, not of COVID, thankfully, but in quick succession. And these were all at the same time, and my Theo of cancer. So it was a lot. It was a lot of death, and it was like it seemed like a nightmare. And during that time period, Zoe was in school, and she's in honors, like she's in calculus AP, she's in, this AP, she's in that, she's on varsity swim. She's like a really, really good kid. And her teachers were so hard on her, and they never gave her a break. And I would say, have you told them, babe, that, things are kind of stressful for you right now, and if you could have a little bit extra time? And the fact that she felt like she couldn't say that, or that she said she told them already and it didn't matter, was sort of shocking to me. Because although Zoe is, brilliant and a star A student, like she literally is an A student in high school right now and on varsity, during that time period, she was at risk. And the fact that, she voiced that and some people weren't receptive to it is terrible. So make sure that you're thinking about the students, what they're experiencing, and what our goals are. Our goals are to make them successful in their learning objectives, in our learning objectives. And I always tell my students that I will not be successful. My success is contingent upon their success. So I'm going to do everything in my power. Like, you're having a bad day. Okay. It might be annoying for me because I have a million other things to do, but I have to figure out why you're having a bad day, because your success still matters to me, and you're a human being. And that's what the students want. They don't want, to come into the classroom and to feel like this lesson was created for people, not them, and that the teacher doesn't even take them as a human into consideration, doesn't look at them, doesn't look to see if they're hungry, are they sad, are they angry? If so, why? Did their mom yell at them in the car before they got out? We have to think of those things and then act accordingly in our classroom. So other things like 504, did they hurt themselves? Did they break a leg and now need extra time? Are they going through something and need extra time? Special ed, we all should know what that is. The IEP, the individualized education plan, which is literally the law, and you have to implement it as soon as you get it, which should be on the first day of school or before you get your students, so that you know what accommodations and supports you need to do for your special ed students. Incredibly important. The ARD committee decides what's on the individualized education plan, which is the law. and should reflect the TEKS exactly. So the art committee gets together, to decide those things. And sometimes they ask teachers to be on the art committee. So very often you will be asked to be on an art committee. So know what those are. If they say, do you know what an art is? And would you be on it? It's not would you must be on it. And so by law, there's a certain group that must make up the committee, and it's one general education teacher. And you should know this, my special education applicants. As a special education teacher must be there, and an administrator. So those are the three people that have to be there. And typically, the special education teacher will collect progress reports of some sort that give like a numerical grade for the progress of the student in different content areas, but then also some detailed information to see, are the supports working? Is the student mastering stuff? Do they need more supports? Do we need to change the supports? And that's what makes up the art committee. So very often you will be asked, if you have a special ed student, to come in if you are it's sad to say, but especially if you're like a technology teacher or an art teacher or a music teacher or PE teacher, because math teachers and they have such little time as it is, and they don't like to pull them out of the classroom, but it's very important to have that voice there. So very often good administrators, good leaders will pull out those content areas in to be the general ed teacher there for the art committee. So know that it will be a duty that you have, and that you should be able to go there and talk about the students, to talk about how you have implemented the items on the individualized education plan, the IEP, and whether or not it's working or not, based on the grades, based on the success that you've seen via the various assessments that you've given, formative and summative assessments that you've given, to make up those grades that the kids have in your class. Here are the different breakdowns. I'm going to send you this PowerPoint so that you can sort of review it. I'm also going to post this and send the video if you want to review it as well. So if you want to listen to the things that I talk about, why is this not moving? Okay. So major don'ts, just like as a quick reminder before we leave, don't overly talk or brag about your accomplishments, but you do want to be able to talk about your things that you can do in a way that's not braggy. Okay, so I have 15 plus years in Texas classrooms, 21 years in Texas classrooms, if you count the work that I've done as a teacher of teachers. But I have also been a researcher. And so my goal is to continue to implement the new things that we're learning, like the science of teaching reading was very excited when it first came out, and implementing more and more social emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching is very cool, and something that I look forward to doing. So finding ways to talk about yourself and your accomplishments that make you sound ready for the position, but not bragging about yourself. Don't say, I don't know anything about teaching, because I've never taught. You should feel comfortable in the research and the work that you've done to prepare before your interview, that you could go into the classroom. So never allow them to think that you haven't done the preparation or that you aren't ready to be in the classroom. Also, don't mention that you aren't certified yet. Just tell them that you are with an educator preparation program, that you've been accepted to an education preparation program, and don't speak negatively of yourself and your previous employers. So you definitely want to, show them your shine for them a little bit, but don't be braggy, be humble, and clear with your goals. And if you've had, especially if you've had a negative experience, but even if you haven't, and maybe they've asked, maybe they know someone because you're in a hometown and they're like, oh, well, do you know Mr. So and so over at the elementary, let's say you're applying for the junior high, and you say yeah, and everybody knows he's just like the worst. Don't say yeah, everybody knows he's the worst. Just don't ever talk about employers or really anybody badly during the interview. You want to be as positive as possible. You want for them to think, ooh, I want that person on my team. Like, I like their energy. I like that they came in here prepared, that they knew what we were looking for, that they kind of took the time to know a little bit about us, and have questions for them too when you go in. Like, think about some questions for them that you would like to know. Like, if on their website they don't have they don't have it explicitly stated like what their technology goals are, ask them at the end of your interview, Yolanda, what are some of the y'all's campus goals, your campus goals for, and because I would really like to know how I can help, the campus goals for technology and for the program, what things are you guys specifically, and truly they should have listed that in the job description, but I mean as the program is concerned. And so find ways and things that engage yourself as a team, really a team member that hasn't been hired yet but needs to be part of the team.
Yes.
Are there any questions?
Okay. To type.
I'm sorry?
You want me to type the question? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
What questions?
Yes, like for example, I've learned a lot what you're saying about. I mean, and like I said, I'm new. I want to also implement the same experience. Like, I mean, not the experience, but your skills that you said you have a lot of passion towards teaching students, helping them. And yes, I had gotten some students that those are the most that not the most, but I focus on helping them. The ones that give you a headache, like they say, oh no, I'm not gonna, but they're the ones I believe they're struggling something. So
they need it. I promise
yes.
you, I have never in my life, and I've had thousands of students, thousands. I've never had a student that wanted for me not to like them, that didn't want to learn in my class. Nobody wants to feel stupid. If a kid is acting out, it's because he is not in control of a situation and feels either scared or angry about it. And it will have nothing to do with you. So please don't take it personal.
Yeah.
My discipline policy is that I treat everybody the same. I don't try to embarrass anyone. I try my best to listen. And it's very important, teachers, especially nowadays, because we have a lot of kids going through a lot of trauma after COVID. Many of them, their parents had to work 2-3 jobs. They were gone or they were there, and the schooling was kind of, or they didn't want to do it because they weren't used to online learning. Whatever the case may be, kids are at a more stress state than ever. So really listening to them, setting up boundaries and coming up with I told my students, we're going to have to do a lot of work. And I was the English language arts teacher and I taught middle school and high school. And so I told them, guys, we have to get down to the nitty gritty. Like, we're going to have to, be editing essays and analyzing poetry. We're going to have fun doing it, but it's going to be work. We are not going to sit around and poke our nose. And so, like I said, we became a community. And so I told them the goals that we were going to have. And I didn't BS them about the work that we were going to have to do. Yes, there was going to be trabajo in the pedo, but we were going to do it and we're going to have fun. We're going to achieve these goals together. So make sure that you take the time to again, read very carefully what the job description has as far as their goals, so that you take time to think about what in there do I exemplify, so I can highlight that on that day. Okay. Take time to practice talking about that with a friend or a loved one. Talk about your teaching philosophy. So first of all, write it down. and then practice talking about it. So my teaching philosophy is that all students, whether they're special ed, whether they don't know the language, whether they're emotionally disturbed, which is ED and under special ed, have behavioral problems, they all can learn. They want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. You know, they want to do things that are fun and interesting. And so finding ways to do that can help them learn. Finding ways to highlight who you are and how you would be a valuable asset and addition to their campus. Write those things down and practice talking about them with a friend or loved one. It's going to decrease your anxiety about talking about it the day of, you know, because they're going to give you a list of questions, and they might give you, you know, time to write it down. They might ask for a lesson, they might not. And so make sure that you go through these questions again in the beginning, or those ideas, you know, what your teaching philosophy is, what is your discipline, what sort of like instructional techniques, you know, how would you support your English language learners? Respond to those questions, and then talk to people in practice before you go in to the interview. If you are going to have to deliver a lesson, again, talk to a friend or relative and explain to them what we're going to do. Okay, so the learning objective for my lesson is going to be the students will identify diction in order to analyze author's tone in poetry. So that's my learning objective. Students will be put into their cooperative learning groups that are going to be incredibly sort of diverse and differentiated on language skill, learning ability, social, emotional level, social, economic level. And the different groups are going to get poems in which students have to read the poem and analyze the different words, you know, highlight the different words that help them identify author's tone in the different groups. And I'm going to walk around checking for understanding. They have the highlighters, they have the paper copies. Everybody has a copy of the poem. Each group has a different poem. And so the students are working, and they have about 10 minutes to do this first step. So the students are reading this short poem, highlighting it. And after the students are finished figuring out the tone, the author's tone, and identifying some diction words, I walk around and I hand out these giant sticky notes per group, and I give them a box of markers and colored pencils, and I say, okay, guys, you know, I want for you to write a bubble map with your tone word in the middle. Whatever your tone word is, I'm gonna get actually looking for a Sharpie, is what I would give to my students. So tone in the middle, and then write your diction words that helped you come to that tone. And so they would all do that. Okay, you and your group have another, 10 minutes to do that. So then the students do that, and they have to decide, okay, well, you write it, you have the better handwriting, blah, blah, blah. And it's really cute listening to them do that, have this conversation, put the right things, and see, oh, they're doing it better. They're putting flowers on theirs, put some flowers on ours, and put some balloons around the thing. And so you get them to stay on task by giving them a time limit, by making sure that you've thought of how long your classes are and how much time you're giving per activity. And so I'm sorry. For international applicants who seek internships. Okay, I definitely will. I'll stay a little bit longer at the end. Keynotes, and I'll say, okay, guys, groups go, choose an area on the wall and put up your sticky notes. Okay, now choose one person per group to explain your poem, to read the poem. So everybody is at their groups and they have their things, and the students are looking at it. and someone from the wall reads the poem, and then they talk about what words they chose and why those words led them to feel this tone, the author's tone, and what that might mean respect to the poem. And each, group gets to present, and, they practice talking about content specific vocabulary. They work in cooperative learning groups. They're moving around the classroom and getting like kinesthetic, visual, audio activities. And then at the end of the class, I'm going to end with an exit ticket, and I show them the question, and then I collect it, and we're going to start with this for the next day. So make sure that you've thought about a couple of lessons. I would say just have a handful. And even if you don't get asked to present them for your interview, you'll have thought of some cool stuff for, when you want to teach. Teaching is incredibly rewarding. I love every single day in the classroom. I actually miss being there every day, but I still am there so often when I go visit my interns in their classrooms. So it's still fun. It's just a different kind of fun because I'm teaching teachers now. So I'm going to put my and that's not the email that you need to write. I am going to put my email here for you. And it is ssauceda. Oops. At teacherbuilder.net. And I am going to talk to make this bigger. Can everyone see that? I feel like it's so small and it still stays small. Okay, good. So you can email me here, and everyone please do email me so that I can send you this. Oh no, I'm just going to give you access right now. You know what? I'm going to give you access, but in any event, please email me later if you want a copy of the video link so that you can review what we've talked about. I also tutor. So if you're preparing for your content exam, if you want more preparation for your specific area, I also give Teacher Builder an incredible discount for their student interns, for their candidates and interns at $60 an hour. So you get me to talk about, and I'll help you, prepare for the things. So let me write my company email, and you can email me at either. All right. So please type those down. Both of them, it's the same, handle, ssauceda, but one is at teacherbuilder.net and the other one is at ciencialearning.com. And that's my company. It's called Ciencia Learning, which is science and Spanish and learning, because all of the things that I teach and write about and utilize are research-based pedagogical strategies. That means they are founded in science and work. So the idea of social emotional learning and including culturally responsive teaching and, those sort of research-based ideas are part of my teaching philosophy, and my instructional strategy for sure is in my consideration when I'm designing instruction. So that's what Ciencia Learning is about. And you can reach me at either of those email addresses. And I thank you so much for your time on a Saturday. I wish you luck. And I also am so proud of every one of you for choosing to be a teacher. I don't believe that people choose to be teachers so that they can, have the easy way out. It is not the easy way out by any stretch of the imagination, but it's incredibly rewarding, especially if you put in the effort and you do it right. So that's it for today, guys. Again, email me at ssauceda@teacherbuilder.net or ssauceda@ciencialearning.com. And please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. But you guys can do that. You can like and subscribe. Those of you in the class, because I do have study videos for many of the content areas. So I have it, I think, for technology. I have it for special ed, for most of the content areas, for the PPR for sure. There's much of them. And so please visit my YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and thank you for choosing teaching. Hey guys, I'm gonna hang up. I know that seems weird, but email me later and I will see y'all hopefully in the classrooms.